like my nose spray and it's not helping because I can't stop sneezing at all. I sneezed like 10 times in the last call I was on. It was bad.
Don't worry about it. Okay. All right. We are live. Welcome everyone to Political Wellness. Day after the election, we are so lucky to be joined by Liuba Grechen Shirley, the founder of Vote Mama, and a fellow member of the VRL community. And it is, I don't know if I woke up well or not well today in thinking about the local and statewide elections that happened yesterday. But I know what is going well is your progress and the championing you are doing around getting childcare funds allowed as a campaign expense for moms to run for office. And we are going to dig into that. So thanks for joining me today, Liuba. I know you are a busy woman.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. And excited to chat campaign funds for childcare always.
Always. Okay. Well, I mean, I think we were actually just saying the good news, right? In your community, in the VRL community, that you saw a lot of moms win yesterday. I'd love for you to share a little bit of that good news with the VRL folks.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw a lot of moms win at the local level, at town council levels, at school board levels, at city council levels. The county races, not so much, and the state races, we're not as great as we would have liked. And we need to focus a lot on the state races, especially going into next year. We just had New Jersey and Virginia state races yesterday, but the state races are going to be really important in making sure that we elect really great moms to those positions and those seats. But we really did have a lot of wins at the local level, and that's where so much of what happens in your daily life is actually decided by your local elected. So I'm thrilled to see that. We've literally just been going through the list of all our candidates this morning and touching base with everyone, and so.
Yeah, so we're doing the same over at Vote Run Lead. And, I think the exciting stuff coming out of VRL is that there are all these firsts, right? And then at the same time, it's like, we're still in the firsts era. We're sort of still, seeing, the first LGBTQIA member of the, Detroit City Council. We're still seeing those kind of firsts. And so it's important, I think, for us to, when we come after, like the day after election, it's like, it's always sort of this mixed bag. Just to pause and sort of take a moment around the amount of progress I think that the women's community, that the LGBTQ community have made, more people of color running in just the last 5 or 6 years, such a small window of time, the number of moms that have stepped forward. And, you ran for Congress, and I want to, this is sort of a two-part question for you. I want you to talk a little bit about some of the lessons learned from your campaign as folks who are first-time candidates for Congress jumping in at that level, because there's quite a few of those, of course, in our community. But then I want to have a second part of this conversation about how you really translated that loss into real political capital into Vote Mamas. But first, I want to hear some of your tips, your campaign tips. What did you learn, and what do you want to know to give these other first congressional candidates?
My campaign tips. I'm not even sure what my campaign tips are. Honestly, I jumped into that race not having a clue what it would be like. I had never run for Congress. I'd never run for anything before. And I ran out of sheer anger. I had a representative who had been in office since I was 12 and had consistently voted to hurt people in my district and across the country. And I was pissed, frankly. And, he came out in support of the Muslim ban. And then I organized a protest, and they told me to come into the office at 3:30 in the afternoon to talk to him when I kept requesting these meetings, and they had locked the doors and sent the staff home. I got a meeting finally because I had all these people protest. I asked if he would hold a town hall, and he told me that holding a town hall would diminish democracy. I held a town hall for him, and it just kind of kept building. Running against him was not something I thought I would do. I did it because I couldn't sit back and watch his voting record anymore. And I will tell you that every mom I've ever talked to who's run for anything across the country, there's always one particular issue that they usually have always tried to reach out to their local representative first to try to get resolved. And then when they got nowhere or they got resistance, they finally realized, you know what, I'm better off for this position. I'm going to step up and run. So I think my biggest tip is that you are so qualified to run for office. You are already ready. Women in particular go into these races and they think, I'm not qualified. I need a few more years to do all of these things that I have to do before I'm ready to run. I was terrified the first time I went and debated King. He had been there since since I was a child, literally. And everybody knows who he is. And he hadn't debated anybody in 8 years. And I sat down for this first debate and I was scared. I'd chewed an entire box of Pepto-Bismol in the back of the car. My mom and my husband drove me, and I thought I was going to pass out. And he answered the first question, and all of my nerves left my body, because you have
Yes.
this perspective of your representatives are so smart and so powerful, and they know all of the details and they know the policy. The biggest thing I learned is they really don't. They're really just people who got lucky in the political landscape of being in the right
Mm,
place at the right time. And that's what politics is. It's a lot of luck, and it's a little bit of unbelievable hard work. But there are a lot of people who get into office who just don't care. They're not as passionate. They don't know the issues. They're not there to represent the community. If you want to represent your community and you know the issues and you talk to voters, you are so ready to run. You're already ahead of the game. So I think that's my biggest advice is be confident in yourself and care about the issues and get out there and do the work. It's not rocket science to run for office.
yep.
It's just a lot of time.
Yep.
Um,
Energy. Yep. Paving the door, hitting the doors. Absolutely. Yeah.
it's raising the money and knocking on doors. And I remember in the beginning, I was told I had to raise $100,000 before anyone would take me seriously. And unfortunately, it's true. If you don't raise the money, you don't have a chance of winning. And that's also a really, really important tip. Call time is critical. I hated call time in the beginning. Call time, you sit in a room with a stack of papers and you dial for dollars. And it's a really awkward thing to do. But the best advice, and this is something I tell to all other candidates, never look at it as asking for money for yourself. It's an investment in your community. It's an investment in the people that you want to represent. It's not money for yourself. It's money to make sure that they have a representative that will listen to them and fight for them. And the second you change that shift in your brain, you can ask for people to max out to your campaign. So don't be concerned about your opponent and whether or not they know more or are more powerful, and raise the money. And that really will show people that you're serious and that you absolutely 100% can run.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Or it is an investment in my leadership, but I'm going to take that leadership and put it into the community, right? Like this is not, I think you're right. We get a lot of those questions. Like, I feel weird asking money for myself. And that is, we know from the research, a very gendered, women tend to say that a lot more than men. People who are outside of the political systems tend to say that a lot more, but it is that investment in you as the vehicle. And so I love that about I'm going to put this back into the community. I'm not putting this in my pocket, right? I'm going to do the good stuff with this. And I need your sort of gasoline in my engine so that I can do this work.
Yeah.
And you actually turned out to be a really formidable fundraiser, Liuba. I think that was your numbers were so much stronger than folks had thought. And you were really able to, transition that into the work at Vote Mama. And, often we find too, when it comes to female candidates, that we tend not to run again at the same rate. And so I would love to hear a little bit. I know we chatted a little bit, like, should I, shouldn't I? But ultimately you did go in this direction of starting Vote Mama. And how did you transition that political capital over to this formidable organization?
Yeah, that honestly was probably the hardest decision I ever had to make. I launched Vote Mama right away after my campaign. I cried for a day, and I had this feeling, the day after election day. And then I literally just kept thinking back to the beginning and really the support that I needed and the support that I didn't have. And when you don't have, political name recognition, you can't really get those meetings, and you can't talk to people, and you can't say, hey, what is it like to juggle two babies while running for office and nursing? And how do you do this? And what's the schedule really like? And you need that. You need somebody to normalize what it looks like to run, because a lot of people will look at it and think, oh my God, that's too scary. That's so far. And I can't even imagine. It's not that hard. And you need somebody to tell you that so that you feel confident to do that. So I launched Vote Mama literally right after the campaign. And we have now supported over almost 250 moms running for office across the country, from school board to Senate. And I had to then make the decision about whether or not, I honestly didn't think Vote Mama was going to take off as quickly as it did. I thought it was going to be a little bit more, I thought it would take a little bit longer. And then Hillary Clinton and Kathy Hochul came to our launch event, stood by my side when we launched this, and we got hundreds of applications from moms running across the country. And I love what we're doing. And then a year later, after I launched the PAC, I launched the foundation,
Yep.
because there's only so much you can do to support these moms when they're running if you don't break down the cultural and the structural barriers they
Mhm.
face,
Right.
just, in politics in general. And so you need to have both the foundation and the PAC work together so you can change the political landscape. And then I was pregnant with my third child. And I remember going back, and I thought I was going to run again. I mean, I talked to you about this, and I remember thinking kind of how this would work. I had already run for office with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I said to my campaign manager, what's going to happen? I'm going to give birth 2 months before the primary, and she's like, well, you're going to get 2 weeks off. You're going to have the baby, and we're going to give you 2 weeks to recover, and then you're going to be right back at it. And it's funny. I actually shared my story with recovering after my second child. I was hospitalized. I had retained placenta and was hospitalized and was very, very sick a month after giving birth. And I couldn't imagine going through that and being in the middle of a campaign. And then at the same time, I was going to run in a really red district or build this national organization that literally is changing the way that people run for office and changing who has a seat at the table. And frankly, I have the ability to make so much more change. And we've passed so much more legislation this year with Vote Mama that I would have passed with one vote in Congress, that I don't regret the decision at all. It was 100% the right thing to do. And Vote Mama has grown so much in the last 2 years. And we have made a huge difference in what it looks like to be a mom running and serving in office. But
Thank you.
it was a
Yeah.
very difficult decision.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important. I was just telling a colleague this morning, some post-pregnancy stuff. I have a 7-month-old. We were chatting about, breastfeeding these babies before we hopped on this, and some of the stuff that you don't really get to see or talk that much about, especially in it used to just simply be that women did not run for office when we had small children. That was it. And you took out just this talent pool of mothers, and you couldn't get even the political establishment to go even take a look at you if you had young children. And I think you're changing also some of the game around the perception of that, right? The news coverage of that. You went to the Federal Elections Commission, you petitioned to get these campaign funds to be used for childcare. And now I was just on the site, 22 states have some
25.
I was going to say, actually, I thought that graphic might be old. And I was like,
yeah, we have to update that. We were just done in Delaware last week.
They're like, oh, that graphic is old. You're like, but I know you're just in Delaware, just getting that passed. So walk us through, the work that we're doing here at VRL is the state to state work, right? That what we're seeing at the federal level is just, it's just not happening fast enough for the women that want to run, for moms with kids that want to run. It's just not happening fast enough. So you've really taken it to the states, and I'd love for you to share that sort of state by state strategy and some of the learnings that you're doing as now you have reached that 50% milestone.
Yeah. So during, my FEC ruling, everybody told me it was political suicide. Don't put this request in. And I was told I was going to be attacked as a woman, as a mom. It's crazy. Don't do it. At the federal level, we've seen almost 60 federal level candidates, including dads, use their campaign funds to get elected. It drastically changes who has a chance to even run. But the FEC ruling only worked for federal candidates. So unfortunately, we have to now take the time to go state by state. Our goal is to get legislation passed in all 50 states by 2023. 15 states have now passed legislation. An additional 10 have approved it through rulings. So 9 ethics rulings and then 1 attorney general ruling. Okay. The goal is to go back to every state that we've passed through a ruling and get them to also codify it. So it really is a very specific state by state strategy. In Delaware, there was actually a request put in by a state candidate, and they said no. There was an ethics ruling that they said no, and so we went back and we worked with local legislators who we support there, Representative Sheree Moore and Senator Kyle Gay, and they introduced the legislation and got it passed. And now Delaware has passed campaign funds for childcare. It was the last state. We were just down there. The governor signed it about 2 weeks ago. And that was incredible because there are some places, Massachusetts is a place that we've had a lot of trouble passing it in. And you would think that would be easy. And then states this year that we did get it passed in, West Virginia, Arkansas, Montana, very Republican states. And there's a lot of bipartisan support around this piece of legislation. And it's the first real structural barrier, the first real financial barrier that we've seen broken down to make it easier for working people to run for office. There is a very real reason that we have so many millionaires in Congress. And then you look at state seats. We want working parents to run for office. We want working moms to run for office. There's 2 problems. One, Most people who serve in state legislatures, most people don't get real salaries. They're considered part-time positions, even
That's
though
right.
some of those people are working full-time. In Georgia, one of our state reps in Georgia that we supported is spending about 300% of her income for childcare for her 4 children.
Yeah.
In Virginia, you're making $17,000 a year. How are you supposed to function on this? And in New Hampshire, it's about $100 per session. So you end up getting old, retired, white, wealthy men who have law practices or they're not working anymore, and they're the ones who can run for office at those levels.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to make it easier for working parents to run, you have to make them, full-time, a livable wage so that people actually want to run for those seats, and you have to make it easier for them to run. Being able to use campaign funds for childcare is a game changer. I would not have been able to continue my campaign without it.
Right.
You give up your salary to run for office in many cases because it's a full-time job to run, and it's impossible. You have to go out and knock on doors. How are you going to do that if you don't have somebody to watch your kids? And if you're a mom running, the first question you're asked is always who is going to watch your kids while you campaign?
Yeah.
We want to change it so the first question is, why are you running and how can I help?
Tell us
That
about
should be the first question.
That's right.
Always.
Yeah. So, I think this is sort of a timely conversation, not just, because of yesterday's elections, but also because we're seeing this back and forth with, how are we going to build a care economy in this country, right? How are we going to just get with the picture and sort of with where the rest of the world is, and understanding, not just this is the fair and just thing to do, that it's good for everybody. It's good for our democracy. It's good for our economy to make sure that our children are well taken care of and that we're not having to make tough choices as parents. I know there's 3 key issues. Vote Mama has the PAC, has the foundation, but on the on the sort of C4 PAC side, you are pushing, sort of universal pre-K. And what other, of these, where are you seeing some of these other big structural barriers in the care economy, and your take there?
If we had, every time I talked about childcare and paid leave when I was running, someone would say, ignore the women's issues and stick to the bread and butter issues. These are the bread and butter issues. And if we had similar labor force participation rates to countries like Canada and Germany, they have quality, affordable childcare, subsidized childcare, real paid family leave, and in many cases, flexible work options so that after you have had a child, you have the ability to go back and reduce your hours.
Yeah.
Because they have these things, they have 5.5. If we were to have the same labor force participation rates, we'd actually add 5.5 million women to the workforce, $500 billion a year to the economy. This is the way that we need to talk about these particular policies, because if we don't, there are so many people who don't listen, and they think, it's your decision to have a child. You need to figure this out on your own. The government should not be involved. Childcare is a completely failed market. Parents cannot afford to spend any more money. The people who work at childcare centers, who are mostly women of color, half of them live on public assistance and can't afford safe childcare for their own children. You can actually make more money going to work at Starbucks than you can in a childcare center, helping to raise the next generation of American taxpayers. And childcare centers themselves, they operate on razor thin margins. So without any government investment, and we're, finally talking about real government investment in childcare, and if we actually get this passed, it's a game changer. I don't think people even understand how different life will be for so many parents across this country. And the thing is, until you change who has a seat at the table, we're not going to have the policies passed in any sort of drastic way. The fact today we're now talking about paid family leave being back in, which is incredible, but it was taken out last week. And the fact that we have, all the Republicans, every single Republican is against it, and 2 Democrats who have never given birth are the ones that are making a decision for the rest of American parents, both moms and dads. It's not the way it should be. You need to change who has a seat at the table and get people into office who actually have firsthand experience, who understand these issues because it's their life and they're legislating on their lived experience. Other countries there was a quote that Jessica Clarko, who's a professor, said, other countries have social safety nets. The U.S. has women. It's completely the most perfect quote I have ever heard.
You call it childcare a failed market in the U.S. I think that's an interesting way to also say that. And you're right about daycare providers. So much of that is true. I do see a lot of in the legislation that you're getting passed that you're finding, a handful of some male allies that are sort of signing on or co-sponsoring. What, have you seen that, strategically, are you including sort of dads there as part of just this normalization effort? And what happens when that does, when they participate? What changes? Does the conversation change?
In terms of getting the campaign funds for childcare passed?
Yeah, yes, in terms of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something that we need to normalize, dads being active participants. There are 71 countries that have paid paternity leave. Having men be involved at that early stage when you have an infant is critical. It keeps women more connected to the workforce. It keeps men more connected to doing, the unpaid care labor. And it's necessary. So having men be involved in getting campaign funds for childcare passed, it's really important. Eric Swalwell has used campaign funds for childcare. He talks about the fact that it was campaign saving for him, and it makes a difference. And the younger men tend to be more supportive, tend to get it, even more so than older women. Older women are actually the ones who push back more, because they have this feeling of, I managed, I had to deal with policies the way that they are, so everybody else can. Younger men are understanding that you can't really run for office if you can't afford childcare, you can't afford to buy a house, you can't afford to pay your mortgage, you can't afford your school loans, because the younger generation is understanding, our salaries have not kept up with the cost of living in this country. And so young people who want to start families are really struggling. So there's actually been more support from younger men, which I think it's good. It bodes well for the change that we want to see.
Yep. This is great. This is really great. Well, I know I only have you for a short time today. I think this is, it's sort of like big and small, right? I love the strategy here, like going state by state on a very specific issue where you can get it done, right? Campaign funds being used for childcare. And, that sort of tackling of each of these structural barriers one at a time, and to show some momentum and to show some wins around this, I think is so brilliant, Liuba. It really, the momentum is fantastic. I think you have such a smart strategy, and I see you getting it done. And I know, it cross over into the VRL community that of women that are using this, that are asking these kind of questions, and as we talk to state legislators, part of this series, it's for folks who are thinking about having a family, for folks who, already are in the sort of, it's hard to make ends meet right now. It's not even an option, right? And so you're really opening up those options for folks. And I'm just, I'm really grateful to have your leadership on this issue, to have you in the women's political community. And I'm grateful for this political wellness power talk that we've just had, and want to thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all that you do. Honestly, you guys kick ass. I remember you were one of the first groups that I reached out to when I was thinking of running, and your support meant all the world to me. So thank you so much. And it was great to see you today and to chat.
Awesome. All right. Check out votemamafoundation.org, everyone. And we'll see you next week for Political Wellness. Same time, same place.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.